in the defense of Square Enix. What's good, my fellow peasants? How you all doing? So, I know this video, straight off the bat, is going to have a lot of people's backs up. There's going to be a lot of salt and flame, especially as we're in such a time of hot water with Square Enix, I feel. You know, since the 15 DLC cancellation apocalypse, and after some of the E3s we've had, the TGSs, the 30th anniversaries, and all of the mucking about with release dates and, you know, showing us content and then it not coming out for almost a decade. All of that has put a lot of sour taste in my mouth and a lot of the fans. But I've got to say, while I've done those videos and I've critiqued them, I've very much come away with a heavy feeling at the end of them, feeling like I haven't really given my full feelings on it. Like, this isn't how I feel about Square Enix fully. I still very much love this game dev. I very much still have faith, and it may be a fool's faith, and I definitely think that with Kingdom Hearts 3 and the 7 remake, that's very much going to be the telling point. Like, with these two games, this is going to really tell us what Square Enix are made of, whether they have anything left in them going forward, or whether they really were just a dev of the golden age era, you know, of the 90s. And will those days ever return? I don't know. But I certainly feel like it's very much a YouTuber thing to do, and I'm guilty of it sometimes, that when bad news hits, we tend to go very much overboard with it. And I didn't go as overboard as what some people did. I've seen some videos saying Square Enix in complete meltdown. Square Enix is ruined. I have seen people saying that Square Enix is completely lost at sea with no hope of ever returning. They're done and dusted. And I mean, that's just completely overblown and exaggerative. So I really wanted to clarify in this video and why I still very much have faith in Square Enix as a game dev, and why I think they are still infinitely better than a lot of what's going out there. Now, that's not to say that, you know, when Square Enix do cross the line, which they have done, we shouldn't turn up the heat. I feel that should be done irrespective of who the game dev is or their history. That is what fans are here for. We are here to praise them when they do the right things, and we're here to roast them into the ground when they don't. And I do feel like we do have to be that harsh sometimes, because it's only through being that harsh that no, these game devs will ever listen. Now, I've got to say, I think Square Enix are better at listening, and I think they are better at adapting than, say, EA. I mean, look how much noise people have been making about EA for years. But the only time they actually listened is when it actually started hitting their wallets. And I've got to say, I don't think we're at that stage yet with Square Enix. Oh, goddamn, I need to caffeinate up for this one. But I want to start with the 15 DLC apocalypse. You know, the thing I really wanted to get on my chest with that is, although we did roast them for it, for cancelling it, I do think there's a level of irony. And I tried to look at it from Square Enix's point of view, because ever since they've been doing these DLCs for Final Fantasy, you know, we've never really had DLC with Final Fantasy. You know, we had a bit with 13 and some other games, but it's always been very minimalistic. 15 was the most DLC we've ever had, and from day one, from episode Prompto to Gladiolus to Ignis and beyond, it doesn't matter what the trailer was, it doesn't matter what the video was, there has been nothing but comments, and you guys have seen them, so you know. Nothing but, oh my god, Square Enix, stop, put it down, give it up, move on already. And all I can think is, if Square Enix saw that, and then they related it to this new wave of DLC, would it have been very much in their mind to cancel these DLCs if they knew they weren't going to get them out on time, if they weren't going to be up to scratch quality-wise? Even the whole thing with Tabata leaving, I highly expect the talks of Tabata leaving and him wanting to was happening way back, and they knew that without its main director on board, these DLCs didn't really have the leadership it needed, or the leadership that had been in place for that team, and the team structure was going to be so irrevocably changed that the DLC simply wouldn't be up to scratch and par, despite how much work and pre-planning had gone into those DLCs. And that's the main thing. There's definitely been work going into these future DLCs, and they're still keeping episode Ardim. And I am so glad, so categorically glad, that Square Enix are a company who are far more likely to either delay or just outright cancel some of the work that they've done rather than do what a load of other game devs will choose to do instead, which is still release it regardless of its quality, another Fallout 76, for example. That game should not have been released, but they did anyway, because so much the temptation, and I've even had it with my own videos, like on a micro scale, like when you spend 12 hours doing a video, and it's not up to scratch, but you've already put in that much work, and you think, just release it anyway. I know that temptation. And I just think about that on a multi-million-pound scale, and it's so much more the easier option just to push it out the door, cross your fingers, hope that it'll very quickly get blown over, the travesty of what you've released, and you can quickly get the money for it and move on quietly and quickly. Square Enix haven't been like that. Now, that's not to say that they haven't tested that they haven't pushed those boundaries and tried them out, but I don't think they've been a repeat offender. And even we can go to like microtransactions, things like 15 and New Emperor, some of the microtrans in their mobile games, they've pushed it, sometimes they've stepped over the line, sometimes they've definitely, but they've known when to reel it back in. We compare that to someone like EA, with their Star Wars, and what happened there. If we look at even just the copy and pasting that we see of Call of Duty games, Battlefield games, FIFA games that are being repeatedly pushed out the door, some of them to substandard quality. But because they're releasing these games so frequently and so often, I feel it's very much like some of these devs know that if they just do it anyway, their next game will be out in 3 months, 6 months, or the same game in the same franchise just a year later, and the whole thing will be blown over because they believed, and I think that's very much beginning to change, that the gaming community had a very short attention span. Travesties could happen, shit games could get released, and it would just be forgotten about. But I feel like we're very much, and I think that's due to a lot of the YouTubers who are out there right now, who are, Jim Sterling, Yongye, other YouTubers who are nailing them to the wall, and bringing up all of their history and making sure it stays fresh in people's minds. I don't think they're getting away with it as much now, but I think that's very different to how Square Enix are. They don't release games so often, so they're more likely to release a game just every other year, especially on a AAA. You look at what they've released in terms of themselves and not as a publisher, they haven't put that much out. I feel like with Square Enix, what they do put out, they try to make it the best that they can. And I emphasize the word they try. Not to say it 100% works, but they try to. And that's why we see these projects get so delayed, so pushed back, so much invested into them. Like the amount that they invest into these games, I think it far exceeds what most devs we see. The amount of times we've seen a Final Fantasy have an engine, a whole brand new engine in studio created just for that thing, and that thing consumes 100% of their attention, and they hinge so much on it that they have to release these games early to try the trailers for these games early to show that they have this portfolio, something for the shareholders to invest in. And then in between these games, these massive long breaks, they need to try to fill it and plug it up with some sort of income earning product of some sort. We also see how much they release going up to these games. I mean, look at 15. They released an entire anime episode. I feel so much came out that would have cost a lot of time and resource to do. That game is just kind of go, cheers. I enjoyed that, but very quickly and easily forgotten about again. The anime episode is an example. 15 Kingsglaive movie, 100%. That game cost a movie. God, more caffeine. That movie would have cost a schmeckle and a barrel's worth, and they would have barely got any kind of income back on that, barely, if virtually a fraction of it. Yet they did that. They did the Uncovered event, which also would have been shite expensive, all for this one singular game to come out, in which they put everything towards it. And that's not even then counting all of the free updates, all of the free DLCs we've had, all of the little interim things they've tried to put in for free to try to balance out and retain the interest within that one singular game. I feel like it's just over commitment with Square Enix is overcommitment to the singular game, how much they invest in it, even to the premise of it. Like, that's the one thing that Square Enix have done a lot of, even with The Quiet Man, which recently came out. You know, 15, for example, they wanted to do the road trip experience, which was something very different, very unique, and they were trying to go for something a bit more out of the box, which is so much, I commend that so much more than the Ubisoftification of action games. I think Jim Sterling did a fantastic video on that, the Ubisoftification, how they just have these repeat formulas and these games with these, you know, they found a product that works. It's the same like the music industry, when they find that exact formula that works. You know, it peaks, it goes up here, the action scene here, the car chase scene here, followed by the death scene here, followed by, you know, I don't feel like Square Enix have fallen into that mold yet. 15 tried a lot of new stuff to show that, and I feel it worked, but that's me personally. But then we have things like even The Quiet Man, which recently came out, and I just want to talk about The Quiet Man, because while I'm going to sit here and say I don't feel like Square Enix release games when they're not up to scratch, The Quiet Man will definitely contradict that. If you haven't seen that, The Quiet Man is absolutely bombing! It's absolutely bombing in the reviews, and I feel like it's not really a surprise, because while it had a very bold premise, you know, a game where the MC can't really hit, he can't hit at all. I say can't really because it's very confusing. Sometimes he can understand what people are saying and he can speak back, sometimes he doesn't, sometimes he needs sign language. That's part of why the reviews are really tanking for that, along with the fact that it cuts from cinematically beautiful, real acted scenes to then really janky looking, horrible graphics with absolutely clunky gameplay, just jankerific. I don't think anyone should be surprised by that. Not good at all. Yeah, it was still bold. But then we go to some of the other examples of what they've come out with, and this is why I want to do this video, because it's so easy for me as a Final Fantasy channel and fan, where if anything slightly goes wrong, and I feel this happens so much with Final Fantasy fans, or fans of any franchise, when the dev wrongs your franchise in even but the smallest of ways, it's so easy to then go, oh, the entire company is bloody dead, it's bloody doomed, what a load of shit, they're all a load of crap. So easy to do that and overlook all of the other things, beautiful things, productive things, things that are in no way to be put on par with the likes of, say, EA and some of their shenanigans. You know, especially with Square Enix, things like Dragon Quest that they've come out with, things like Kingdom Hearts going forward, World of Final Fantasy, Secret of Mana, Octopath Traveler, although publishers for that. I mean, even the things that they've been publishers on and they've supported, some of those projects have been absolutely phenomenal. I'm thinking Platinum Games for Nier Automata, Don't Nod for Life is Strange, the amount of commitment they've put towards Tokyo RPG Factory and the great things they've released, like Lost Sphere, I Am Setsuna, or the Tomb Raider reboot. All of these things that they've been actively interested in, I look at their portfolio and there's not much in there that I can point to and I can go, or I can get seriously upset about. Seriously, there's things that I can be disappointed with, and I simply know that disappointment comes because of the pedestal and the expectation that I have of Square Enix, because of what we have ingrained in us from Squaresoft days. You know, our childhoods are pegged to it, and it's so hard, and you can just see it in the comment section of almost any Final Fantasy related video. It's just a harkening back to Squaresoft days, and you know, we have such rose-tinted goggles of what that was and what those games were back when our young squishy minds were so much more influenced, and the beauty of gaming was so much more simplistic than it is now, and there wasn't any of this crap that has to be competed with. And this is why I empathize with Square Enix to some degree, is to survive in this gaming climate, to survive in this market, to be a AAA stage competitor. Look at what you're having to compete against, and look at what they're doing. These franchises that they so very quickly copy and paste and release and re-release and re-release, and you know, Square Enix have started catching up with that, but they're not really doing it to any kind of serious degree. You know, we might get a 12 remaster one year, then a year before that a 10 remaster, you know, but they've not really gone overboard with all of the porting. But they have done so much great work, and there's so much I can appreciate for, even though it's not within the Final Fantasy franchise. I can even appreciate the mobile games. Like Square Enix, they're the forerunner in terms of quality mobile games with quality gameplay and story. Yeah, I'm not talking about 15 New Empire. I'm talking about Opera Omnia, Mobius, Brave Exvius, these games that are hitting #1 on the mobile app stores unanimously with huge number of players, and I feel like it's so easy for us to overlook those as well, simply because us in the West, we're very standoffish with mobile games, we don't like them, and if anything, when we hear about these games doing well, it sullies our view of Square. Yet we have to remember that they are a Japanese developer, they are based in Japan, and out there, mobile games is a lot of the time the only way people can game. It's the only access that they have within, you know, the confines of their commuting, and the way that they can play games. They don't have the consoles, so they are producing quality games for the market, the core market that they have. And I just feel like, regardless of whether you hate or love mobile games, I still think it's something that we should appreciate, and we should look at and realise that they are serving a very much needed market. They have that market and they're fulfilling it, and they are the forerunners in that. You know, but even just looking forward towards Square Enix, so while I think there's been a lot of missteps, and I feel like they've tried a lot of stuff out, and I feel like a lot of it has failed, especially here in the West, mostly just because their marketing is absolutely terrible. Like, in no way when I come out to defend Square Enix this video am I going to defend their E3s and some of their the marketing surrounding these games, because that's been terrible. But that's the thing, I always think that if I didn't participate in actively watching Square Enix behind the scenes, if I just played their games, like I didn't look at all these trailers, I didn't watch all these director interviews, I didn't watch all these press releases and news articles, if I didn't fulfill it, if I didn't engage in any of that, just like I did back in the 90s, I just played the games when they came out, I just took them on knowing nothing about them, I think I would very much still be absolutely in love with Square Enix. Because on face value, the games that I've played that they've come out, I've loved them. I've loved them across the board, mostly. There has been, of course there has been some issues. And I very much think those issues are surrounding the fact that Square Enix haven't found a way to come into this generation yet. They haven't. And it's not been through a lack of trying. It's just they haven't had a refined, unique game engine that they can really press their stamp on. And like I said, that's not through without trying. No, they tried with Luminous Engine, and that just turned out to be a pig, and just really came around and bit them on the arse. I think the proof of the pudding in that is the fact that Kingdom Hearts 3, their two biggest games going forward, FF7 Remake and KH3, they've both gone on to Unreal Engine, which I think is a testament to their need to concede that they can't be competing with these Western companies. As much as they want to, they simply cannot. And I think that the more they try, the lower their scores have got. And I think that's very much been through 2016, 2018. Their average score for most games have really come in at about a 7.6. I'd say about 7.6. Most of what I've looked have fluctuated between 7 and 8, but mostly kind of slap bang in the middle there, which to me, 7.6 says, good, I enjoyed it, but there were all of these flaws. That gameplay was outdated. That story wasn't fully rounded out, or there were some storytelling issues. And actually, I've kind of noticed a trend with it. The titles that have been tried to be more AAA and tried to be more competing with what's out there, or replicating what's out there, or trying to very clearly market to the West and what the Western fans are liking, that's when your score has lowered. And it's actually been more games that you've released, like the mobile games, like World of Final Fantasy, your mid-range to mobiles, to your turn-based, to even what you're coming out with Tokyo RPG Factory. Those are the games that have scored the best. The games that have been closer to what the old Square Enix / Square Soft were, they've done better. Those have been your 8s and your 9s. But it's when you've tried to mimic and be something that you're not. And that's what really pains me with Square Enix, because there is a way for you, Square Enix, to be the company you once were, and do that in a AAA HD kind of way today, in a AAA competitive way. In fact, I think the more you go back to your roots, the grassroots of why people loved you, and that was things for your storytelling. That was what for the worlds you created and the sense of adventure and relationships and the stories that they told through their hardships and the encounters that they had. Those kind of really core values that your games were just smothered in, layered in. I actually think if you go back to that, which would mean backscaling some of your graphical fidelity, some of your DLC, some of this incessant need to try to be like what the other games devs are, I actually think that would be more successful for them, because it would be a refreshing change. It would be a refreshing different lawn of grass for people to come and sit over on, because I definitely think people are getting tired. I actually think that's why we're finding all of these other games, these fringe games, even JRPGs as a whole, really rising in popularity, because this is a time where gamers are looking for something different. People are getting tired of the old ways, of the ways that have dominated 2010 to now. People are getting bored of the same old shit and they're looking for something else to go to, and that's where your position should be, Square Enix. You should be the ones holding that flag of, look at us, we're doing something different. And that is why it's so frustrating to see more and more Square Enix trying to copy what the other devs are doing, and there's 100% copying going on. I mean, they even kind of said it themselves, that they were looking at a lot of game devs like EA to try to know how to influence the West. Don't do that, stick with your own stamp, because at your core, you have something really beautiful there, Square Enix, that a lot of people will happily flock to if you just stay strong to that. And I think that it's going to be so telling. That point right there is going to be so telling with the 7 remake, because the thing is, if you can't do the 7 remake in a way that had all the heart and core values that you had back in the 90s, if you try to make the 7 remake something that you think will appeal rather than something that sets itself apart and feels fresh and different from anything that's happening, the same reason why 7 was popular back in the day, if you can't do that and you simply try to make 7 like what you think will appeal to the masses now, well then I think you're done for. I honestly think this will be the telling point of where the Square Enix are done for, because you're never going to win that game. You're never going to win that battle, never. Even if you try to refine Luminous another 3 or 4 times or create an engine after that, you are never going to create bigger or more open or more compelling open worlds. You're not going to create better action combat systems, or you're not going to come up with smarter DLC structures to appeal for people of the money. You're not gonna do any of that better than what the Western devs are doing. They've got too much of a lead on you, and frankly I feel like you're trying to race them on something that actually the rest of the gaming community are moving away from. And that's why I think your success lies, Square Enix, and I really hope they can see that. I definitely don't want to make it seem like they're intentionally heading that way, because honestly, I don't know whether that's the case. I honestly, when often I talk like this, that they're trying to mimic the West, I could be conflating, because there could also be very much the side that Square Enix are just testing. That's what the last 2 years have been, that they've implemented these new kind of ideas to see how they work with their games, because that's the frustrating and hard thing with moving into a new generation of gaming, is that unless you try and test it out and see whether it works for your product, you don't really know. And that's what I can happily chalk the last 3-4 years up to with you, Square, is that you've tried to test a lot of stuff. Some of them have been naughty and sly, but it's all going to depend now on how they respond to it. And I'm just really hoping that this beautiful company with a lot on the horizon, a lot still to come, that definitely haven't burnt their bridges like some game devs have. 7 Remake, Kingdom Hearts 3, they've even recently just trademarked Parasite Eve. A game for Parasite Eve, so I think there's one in the pipeline for that. There is also rumours going around, but it's also kind of very speculative, that the Luminous Studios production game, or some sort of franchise game, is coming out. It blows my mind. If this is true, this is jokes, absolute jokes. Square Enix might be trademarking in the Luminous Studios engine game, it might be called Last Idea. Last Idea. Oh my god, Last Idea. And I feel like it wouldn't surprise me if that's actually true, because I feel like Square Enix are in the position they're in kind of now, where they were when they created Final Fantasy. Not financially, nowhere near financially what they were when they created Final Fantasy. It was literally, this either works or it doesn't. Not the reason why they called it Final Fantasy though. That's a massive, you guys already fucking know. But in terms of creativity, I think Last Idea would just be spot on the nail. And no, Final Fantasy Last Idea. I think there definitely needs to be a new wave of directors going into this. I'm just hoping this all happens in the PS5 era. I don't have much hope left holding it on the PS4. I think I'm going to say Square Enix and PS4. No, it wasn't a wipeout. I just feel like they didn't really stamp their mark. They landed in mediocrity. 7.6. They kept a lot of their integrity still intact, despite the frustrations. They could have done so much worse and handled it way worse. They could have released all those shitty products that they cancelled. They could have released on time all of those games that should have had a delay. As much as it sucks for gamers, would you rather have had those games come out buggy, glitchy, and crap? The PlayStation 5, the Square Enix are the first ones we've heard putting out job postings for the PlayStation 5. So it gives me hope that they've got a really early lead on it, and that maybe they do have the development kits already for it, and that they can really get an early lead on the PlayStation 5, and that this can be the era where we see what you are made of, Square. Testing time is over, baby. Come in strong and hot, the way I like my coffee. Oh, it's fucking cold now. And in my personal opinion, if they analyse the last few years correctly, we will see more unique, niche, grassroots kind of small to mid games. Also with the large games, but not as grandiose attempts as what you've made on those AAAs. Keep it closer to what we've seen Persona 5, to what we've seen Tales, to what we've seen Dragon Quest. Not visually, I'm saying. Keep it closer to that, but nowhere near as far reaching as what 15 has been. Like there is a middle ground between those games, the RPGs, and 15. No, those games that have 130-hour long gameplays with hugely fleshed out storylines and characters and side quests and events and a combat system that really harks back to the 90s. And 15, there was a huge middle ground between there, and I think within that middle ground lies your success, Square Enix. There we go, guys, just off the top of my head ramble. I don't know whether that really came off as a in the defense of Square Enix. My closing thoughts, my rounding thoughts are that while they have made a lot of profit, followed a lot of Square Enix stuff, and I can't point to any serious misdeeds of misdirection and misleading. There's just been few attempts of it, and I think that it's also been few attempts mixed in with genuinely just trying out new things to see if it works. And I think that's how I can chalk it up at the moment. And I think that going forward it's going to really show whether that those were just trying to find your creative footing, or whether that was trying to find a way to break into an EA-like business model of making the absolute most amount of money for the most minimal amount of effort. And only time will tell, I feel, whether it's one or the other. So that's how I feel about Square Enix right now. Still very much excited for their games. Never been a follower, you've been a leader. But there we go, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for listening. Till the next video. Grimo!